All right, yeah, that song gets my blood pumping, gets my heart pounding. That's Ride Strong. That's a new song I've been working on for a while now, and it's almost done. Not quite done yet, but that's an early preview. I wanted to put that together for these next couple podcasts, and especially for these times that we're going through right now. It's really important for us to stay strong and stay positive, and the message in this song is just that. You got to fight through some hard times to get through the good times. We will definitely get there, people. Just stay focused. Right now, I'd like to take your mind off of things, and I'm going to share with you an interview that I did on the Monsters of Rock cruise in my cabin with the one and only Kelly Nobles. Kelly's playing the double bass drums on this song, and he plays in a band called Rail. They're one of my favorite rock bands from Seattle, Washington, from the early 80s, the late 70s. Actually, I found out that they've been around for even longer than that. They formed in 1969. I had no idea the history behind the band. So we're going to talk about the band Rail and their drummer Kelly Nobles coming up. Do you have the working man blues? If you live in the Northern California area, be sure to visit Rayleigh's to get your essentials and get yourself a bountiful supply of the heavy metal hippie double IPA made exclusively by the Out of Bounds Brewing Company, Northern California's finest craft beer. All right, if you search on YouTube for Rail the Band, that's R-A-I-L the band, you will find some videos of Rail the Band, and you might even find the videos of me jamming with them. Yep, Frank Hannon jammed with Rail on their song Hello, and we also played that Rush song that you just heard called Working Man. Rail is one of my favorite bands from Seattle, Washington. We opened up for them when we were just starting out as City Kid back in the club days in the early 80s. We drove up to Boise, Idaho, and Kelly Nobles and I talk about that place. There was a club called the Tub Pub in Boise, Idaho, and the Tub Pub had hot tubs in the club. So when you paid your cover charge, you could come in and hang out with your friends and get in hot tubs while you watched the band. That was before AIDS, and that was even before herpes, and definitely long before this coronavirus came out and made everybody do social distancing. There was no social distancing in the Tub Pub in Boise, Idaho in 1982. Well, anyway, fast forward to this last winter of 2019. I was playing my song Ride Strong for my good friend Jack Halsey. And he and I looked at each other and said, man, Kelly Nobles would be the perfect drummer to play double bass drums on this song. So I got a hold of Kelly, and he was gracious enough to record drums and send them to me via email. And I imported the tracks onto the track that you're hearing now. I'm going to play that for you in a little while. But first, before we get started, I want to tell you a little bit more about Kelly. He's 6'4" tall, and he's got arms longer than LeBron James, and he plays drums like a madman. It's like the drumsticks are shredding lumber all over the stage when he plays. And, you know, Rail never really got the big breaks that I thought they should deserve. So they took some time off in the late 80s, and Kelly went on to be the regional manager of United Parcel Service. And also, now he has become a major hemp farmer. Kelly and his partners have manufactured seeds for hemp farming that produce CBD oils that benefit people with medical needs. So we're going to talk about all that interesting stuff, and we're going to listen to some music with Kelly Nobles from Rail on the Far Out Podcast. All right, you are listening to the Far Out Podcast. I'm Frank Hannon, your host, and we are recording this on the Monsters of Rock cruise in my cabin. My cabin has turned into a little studio here on the ship. I just got done talking to Niels Lozauer, and now I'm joined by an old friend, one of my favorite rock and roll drummers, Mr. Kelly Nobles. What's happening, Kelly?
Hey, Frank, you are too kind, man. This is the high point of the trip, hanging with you, buddy. Except I'm recovering from my heavy metal hippie night the other night. That was awesome.
Oh, man, they sold 2,000 cans of heavy metal hippie beer. Can you believe that?
Oh, yeah. No, I can believe it. Everybody was going wild.
That was the first night of the cruise, and I have to be honest, I was kind of worried that everybody was going to get hung over on right away, you know, because that's a strong brew.
Yes, that for sure it is, but it's great, man. I love it. Love it.
Thanks, Kelly. So I'm talking to Kelly Nobles. I mean this with my heart. He's one of my favorite rock and roll drummers because when I was a kid, I saw Rail back at the Boise Summer Festival or something, 1982, 83, something like that. We had driven up there to play a gig with our band before Tesla. We were called City Kid. And, you know, we were a cover band. And we were playing at a club called the Tub Pub.
Yeah, in Boise, yeah. Hot tubs in the club.
Hot tubs in the club.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and Rail played, and, you know, I was just blown away by Rail. I mean, because obviously you guys were a kick-ass band, but your drumming, you know, I was like, wow, that guy's freaking cool.
Oh, I'll tell you what, man, it's just all about having fun. And the four guys in Rail, the four of us have been together since 9th grade. We learned to play together. Still together now. We're still out gigging. 50 years. I hate to say that, you know.
You guys are classic, and in my mind, you know, as a fan, you guys are legendary and classic, and I want to talk to Larry, and hopefully we're going to get you on the Monsters of Rock cruise eventually. Someday it'll happen. You guys are awesome. You're from the Pacific Northwest. You guys never left Seattle. You guys based out of Seattle.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of interesting. We had our own label, Dynasty Records, and Mike Fisher from Heart, Magic Man, produced our first record. In '79, we started recording it, and then our manager, John Bauer, he wrote the writer for Van Halen. He was pretty close with the guys, and he did 13 rehearsal shows for them in the Northwest. They called them the Lost City shows before they went on the 1980 Women and Children First tour, and we were fortunate enough to start on those. They hired us whether we played the next day or not. We ended up playing 47 cities one day at a time, finding out the next day. They were so good to us. It was a magical time. But
opening for Van Halen in the heyday.
In the heyday, 1980, yeah, and they were really, really good to us. There were several times that their label and agency were on them about the opening act slot because they wanted to break an act that they were, you know, on their own label. And after the 47 cities, we got really close with them, and we're going to go to Europe with them. They invited us to, but they knew that we hadn't finished the album. Here we are on the tour, and don't even have an album out.
Right.
So they said, "Get your ass back to Seattle and finish that record," which we did. And
that's the one with Hello and Backseat Lovers and Gangbusters and all that stuff.
Yeah. Arrival was the name of the album. It turned out it was kind of funny because MTV hadn't started yet. We shot.
Yeah, this is before MTV.
Yeah. MTV really got up and running about '83, and this was about '79 or '80. Maria from our management company had us do a video before there were music videos. It was for some guys going to college for their thesis, but we shot it in the Juanita Fieldhouse and brought in a crowd. KISW got involved, and we made a pretty cool video. Didn't know what we were going to do. Maria tells us this MTV basement tape thing came on, competition for $100,000 and an EMI record deal. Turned out to be 6 months and 20,000 bands, and we're telling her, no, we're not entering some basement tape. Well, she entered us anyway, and thank God she did.
Yeah, yeah, you guys, that's one of the things you are known for. Now, I hate to use this word unknown band, but unfortunately, Rail never broke. And to me, that's, tragic because you guys were a kick-ass fucking band. But you did break on the MTV basement tapes.
Yeah, and they were great. After we won that...
With the song Hello.
With the song Hello, that's what triggered me thinking about it when you mentioned that. And so MTV, for about 8 months, played Hello to death, which was great, and they ran our itinerary. And we negotiated the terms because they wanted us to do all cover songs from their label, and we wanted to do our originals.
Right.
And so we had to hire Schlesinger and Guggenheim, who represented Scorpions and everybody else, and finally we settled with them half and half. And then Night Ranger's producer, Pat Glasser, produced it, and Van Halen's people came up to Seattle, and we did another video, 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4 rock and roll, yeah.
And then so MTV was great. Then that was released in '84.
And then you did Fantasy, the song Fantasy.
Fantasy was on, yeah, we did that on MTV too. And so from 80 with Van Halen and 83, 84 with MTV, everything was kind of happening for us, but we weren't signed to a national label.
Yeah.
And it didn't get traction.
So being from Seattle, you guys would trek down to LA and do this stuff, but you didn't really have a whole lot of support down there.
It was funny. We only played LA once. We played all through Florida, up the East Coast. We played with Dokken in the Bronx. We played all over the country. Denver was probably our biggest market, but it was kind of a cult thing. We play the clubs, play the Rainbow, play Red Rocks Theater 3 or 4 times.
You played my hometown of Sacramento at the Oasis.
Yes,
and our band opened for you.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And there was a little cubby hole right behind where the drum riser was, and I sat back there. You were playing on your bar stool.
Hell yeah. I used to be a keg for about 5 years, and then it upgraded to a bar stool.
You sat on a keg?
Yeah, about 5 years, yeah.
When did you start playing drums, bro? Who was your biggest influence when you first started?
I love Tommy Aldridge. There's just so many of them, but when I was young, standing up in the front of Zeppelin, and all of us, we'd go to the shows together, and I want to be that guy, And so I remember seeing Brownsville Station, and he had 4 shell toms, and he was standing up playing, and he's breaking drumsticks, and I'm going, yeah, that's badass, And
yeah.
So that started me with the big tom thing.
Okay.
And then I saw Corky Lang with Mountain at the Paramount, and he was bouncing sticks off his cymbal into the balcony.
Yeah.
And I'm going, dude, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of those things that you see, you just pick up on and then run with it.
Definitely. Well, for everyone that's listening, let me describe Kelly Nobles to you, okay? How tall are you, man?
6'4".
6'4". And imagine Animal on drums. Well, this guy is beyond Animal. Like I said, when I was a young guy and when we opened for you guys, the style of drumming that you do, I call it caveman drumming, And when I get guys that record in my studio, I always tell them, they're always wanting to play the fancy kind of paradiddles and shit. I'm like, no, you got to play caveman drumming.
Yeah, get on it.
But you take it with a double bass, which is one of my favorite styles of drumming. Like you mentioned Tommy Aldridge and Neil Peart, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings me to the reason why I would really wanted you to perform on my new song that's going to come out this year called Ride Strong.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very humbled by that. What an invitation. Thanks for letting me jump in on that.
When I heard that song, and I had the demo I did with the little drum machine, I played it for our good friend Jack.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's Kelly Nobles all the way. So we put it together, and I sent you the tracks. You guys recorded it. It's all about that double bass, man. I love that double kick style, which you don't really see too much. Even a lot of these drummers you're hearing on the cruise here, a lot of drummers do that.
Yeah, I've just always been drawn to that. And it's the live action, a lot of tom work, double bass, and a little cheating live, with the sticks. We had 4 aircraft landing lights behind the drums and a great big fan.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even the strength of beating it. You just snap the cymbal and break the tip off.
Yeah.
And you snap it, and then it starts shredding, and those fan would push the sticks up into the aircraft landing lights and make it look like a sawmill.
Yeah.
We did 6 songs with Van Halen, 30-minute set, and then a whole lot of Rosie for an encore every night.
Yeah.
And I averaged 56 sticks in 30 minutes.
56 drumsticks in 30 minutes. Yeah. Everyone listening, dial up Rail the Band on YouTube and check out Hello. That drum intro is one of my favorite. The tones you got on that are killer.
That was Mike Fisher from Heart. He did that for us.
Yeah, Roger Fisher and Mike Fisher from Heart. Everyone that knows me knows that I'm huge fans of them as well. And so they produced that in their home studio, is that right?
Well, Raj had a studio in his living room, and it was the 24 track actually. Mike was really into detail. We spent a lot of time. He got some great drum sounds for me, and he owns all the credit for that.
Yeah, the tom-toms, the tone of those tom-toms is stellar.
And I'm a little partial because right after, that was during Dog and Butterfly, and I was dating his secretary and house sitting in Mike and Ann's house driving the Porsche, and she was singing on some songs, and we toured with Heart, and then found out at the end of Dog and Butterfly when he left Heart, it was because he married my sister and they had 8 kids.
Oh, wow.
So my brother-in-law, Mike, and all my nieces and nephews, their dad is Magic Man.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's a family affair there.
It turned into that, yeah.
Yeah. So the band was called Rail and Company, is that right?
Yeah. Our crew was with us the whole time, and we all, back in the day when it was bars for cheap money, and there's 4 band members and 6 crew guys, we had our semi, 1 or 2 rooms, we were all doubled up in there, and so the crew, the N Company was was our crew. We really felt like we were all a gang, And then as disco came in, Whiteheart went to Heart, and Silver Beatles and Chicago Transit Authority Chicago, and we thought Rail and Company sounds like we should have a horn section.
Yeah.
So we said, let's just call it frickin' Rail, And
Rail, that's definitely a rock and roll name. So I don't know how we ended up hearing of you guys besides seeing you at the Boise Summerfest thing there. But prior to that, a good friend of ours that lived in the Seattle area had come down to Sacramento, and he had the Arrival album. The back of the album cover had all those cool pictures.
Yeah.
You guys were jet skiing and doing all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
What a great album.
Some of the pictures, the other guys in Rail, pretty athletic, and our best friends who weren't signed at the time, Queensryche, all the Queensryche guys, they were in the mob at the time. We used to play baseball every Sunday. But those little shits would knock the ball over the fence. They were as athletic or more, and we played every Sunday for months, and just happened to have those photos and put them on the back of the record before they were signed.
Oh, wow. The Queensryche guys?
Rick gave Chris and Mark guitar lessons for...
Yeah, Chris DeGarmo, yeah.
And Mike Wilkins,
What bands have you been watching on the cruise, man? Who's been turning you on?
Everybody's good. I mean, I haven't seen a bad band, and some of it is surprising. I mean, Y&T was great. You guys were phenomenal. Your guitar was so sweet. I mean, I know I'm sitting here with you, but I'm telling you what, dude, it was awesome.
So you got almost 50 years with Rail. Did we say 50 years? Am I exaggerating?
Yeah, 50. No, it's 50. 69 to 2019, so we're...
Wow. Yeah. Man, I've seen some pretty funny pictures of you guys from the old days.
Yeah. Well, Terry was famous for the fur boots, and they went into the museum, the EMP that started in Seattle. Paul from Microsoft does.
He put the furry boots in the museum?
It was in the EMP for probably 20 years or 15 years. They just took them out a few years ago.
I heard he broke them out for a show. Terry Knight was wearing the furry boots.
We played a couple weeks ago at a casino north of Seattle called the Tulalip, and he didn't tell Andy or Rick, and Rick does an acoustic thing for a little while. And so he jetted back and threw on the tights and the furry boots and came out. And I think the biggest reaction was from our two guitar players who were like, "Holy shit, the boots are back!" But the crowd loved, our fans loved it.
Oh, heck yeah!
Kind of a connection to the past.
The boots are back.
Yeah,
that's classic. Yeah, so if any of you listening have never heard the band Rail, please check them out. They're like a cross between Triumph and Rush and all the great northern bands. You guys had that northern sound.
Yeah. There's a lot of melody. There's a lot of double guitar leads. That's kind of a signature thing for us. And Terry's high voice, and then some double bass and tom pounding.
Yeah, double bass and tom pounding and stick breaking from yours truly, Kelly Nobles.
Of course.
So talk about some other things outside of music, because the original concept for Far Out Podcast was guys like you and me who do other stuff outside of music. Now, I don't want to get my facts wrong here. You really worked hard with UPS for a long time.
Yeah, so one step before that, Rick left the band in '85 for a few years to go to college and got a degree. That's right about when things were really lighting up. So we were wondering who the hell we're going to get to play guitar, and it ended up being Ronnie Montrose.
That's right, Ronnie Montrose. Yeah.
He played with us for about a year and a half and several different tour legs, and our fans call it the Montrail. We did half Montrose vintage stuff and half Rail stuff, and he was a great guy. I mean, those were good times. And then Rick came back, and then in about 88, 89, the guys, we'd been playing so much. Terry and Andy were married, and Rick, and they had kids, and the kids were getting to be older, and they just pretty much stopped playing. Yeah. So in '89, I needed to get out of town, or I would be getting in trouble. I moved from Seattle to Oregon, where I was born, and a lot of family down there, and started at UPS, pulled triples for 15 years, and then I went into management, and I ended up being the operations manager for Northeast Oregon. I had 6 UPS centers that I managed for another 15 years, and just recently retired.
Wow, man. Yeah. Well, gosh, congratulations. Obviously a very hard-working man.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I loved about Rail, too, being a hard-working band. When I first saw you guys, you had your own stage production. You guys were putting on an arena show in the clubs.
Every chance we could, we'd take another loan, and I think we were up to a few hundred pars and trusses, and had to buy a semi, and it wasn't your typical club, when we rolled in.
No.
We had the distribution box that Jer would have to go over to the power and put one hand behind his back and tie in the cables for our circuit so we could get enough power to the stage to run everything.
Yeah, you guys were putting on arena shows in the clubs, man, back in the old days. All right, so now let's talk about your new venture, you're a hemp farmer.
Yeah. So I kind of fell into that. We're on 100 acres, and we have alfalfa, 60 acres, and Timothy grass hay that we've done for ever since I've been there in 2000.
Because you have horses as well.
Yeah, my dad, my sister were both trainers at Emerald Downs, and they ran horses in Portland. And so we had the brood mares and horses that both attended, and we'd have 16 or 18 horses off the track, and that's all simmered down. We're down to 3 now, and they were out of the horse business at the time. But that was a cool connection. When you talked with my wife, you just melted her because she's a horse person. And
yeah, we had a great conversation about horses backstage. Where was that gig?
With Def Leppard at the Portland.
Oh, okay, at the Rose Coliseum there.
Yeah, they used to call it the Rose Garden, and now it's called the Moto or something.
The Rose Garden. Yeah, we were backstage, and we were chatting it up for about an hour about horses. Yeah. So you started off growing grass hay, orchard grass, and stuff like that?
Still have that. And then in Blue Tattoo, our other guitar player, Bud, he told me about this friend he knows. He owns a fertilizer company called The Kind 420, top-end fertilizer for marijuana.
Wait. The Kind 420.
The Kind 420.
This is where I'm going to insert a far out. So we're talking about the Kind 420, people.
Yeah, the logo's the mad scientist with the white coat and the hair sticking up, and
he's a scientist.
Well, that's the logo.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, but Kelly Martin, our partner, has been experienced in all kinds of operations, and so he's the genius behind this. They got me involved with this growing hemp. I'm the dirt guy. I'm the farmer.
Okay.
Kelly's the botanist, and we ended up not just growing the hemp for the biomass, which is what everybody does.
Well, today's hemp and today's pot is definitely a lot more further along scientifically than it was back in the 70s, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely.
My mom grows weed, and, when she was living up in the hills, they were like scientifically using like bat guana and all this like recipes for the. He's got that too.
Yeah. Well, they mix blends with all that stuff for the 420 fertilizer.
Okay, so we're talking about 100 acres, you said.
So that's the farm, but we ended up we plowed through 5 acres. We're going to plant 6,000 plants, and we ended up only using about 3.5 or 6,000 plants. But the thing that Kelly decided partway into this was let's be breeders, which means grow seed. But it has to be feminized, because if it's male, it'll ruin the crop.
Right.
So you got to take a female plant, and they give them 3 types of chemicals, and they make them think they're male. And then they grow the plant, then they got to shake the branches and scrape pollen into a petri dish, and by the time you end up with a little 4-ounce bottle, it's about $10,000. So
wow.
Pollen is expensive.
Yeah.
And then you got to pay. I paid 15 kids 2,000 hours to take little watercolor brushes and paint that pollen on every single bud on every plant.
Holy cow.
So it's very complicated to get the plants pollinated. And then you grow the seed, and then which we ended up being successful at.
Wow.
And so now the seed is worth, 10, 20 times what the biomass is. So we kind of took it to a different level. We do have the biomass for the CBD, but everybody's getting into this hemp thing, and they need seed. Mm-hmm. And so we're kind of the head of the game on that too. And
so you're manufacturing the seed.
Yes, we grew the seed, and Kelly's marketing it right now. He's hired attorneys to draft the seed contracts, because there's a lot of genetics and copyrights and lawsuits behind selling somebody else's genetics. So
wow,
it's turned into quite a business.
That's amazing, man. What a thing to get into.
Yeah, we're going to get you into it.
Okay, all right.
It's kind of like making beer.
It's kind of like making beer. Yeah. The beer making thing I've learned is definitely a science project. I mean, you got to have every detail. The grain has to be ground up just right. It's got to be put in at just the right temperature. Then it's got to be immediately cooled into a lower temperature and put into a different tank. And yeah, it's a whole process. And what you're describing to me with the hemp seeds, that's pretty detailed.
Then you got to take the seeds to the Oregon University, and then they grow them. They check germination rates. They check CBD content, THC content. You can't have more than 0.3 of THC if you're going to sell it as CBD. So there's a lot of testing and certification. And
okay, so the end result of what you're doing, starting at ground level, the dirt work, like you said, the end result is like CBD oil.
Yeah, that's the biomass, the flower. That's what they'll distill down to oils, and it's for that purpose.
For medical purposes, then.
Yeah, and my folks are in their mid-80s, and Mom was having trouble getting around in the house, and she started using CBD for her knees.
Yeah.
She's out gardening. A lot of the people that are using CBD now, they never smoked pot. and they're older folks who don't want to smoke pot, but it works so well they'll give it to their friends who give it to their friends. And
yeah.
I've got some friends who have distilleries, pot distillery shops, and they make more money off selling CBD products to older people who've never been interested in THC.
Right, and now they're manufacturing it into cookies and gummies and things that are edible, so people don't have to smoke it and, you know, pollute their lungs and everything. Yeah. And the medical benefits are definitely, it's a miracle. It really is. It definitely works. I know personally, whenever I've had like back flare-ups or whatever, you know, I put the CBD ointment on there and it helps right away. Yeah. And like you said, your mom, she's out there gardening now.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend named Mark Keith. He and his wife, who's a doctor in town, have started a record company called 419, almost 420, because it's CBD.
It doesn't have the THC.
Right, right. And they're doing a feature film, and they've got an album coming out, and I'll tell you about it. They'd like to get you involved in that, too. We'll see if we can twist your arm.
Hey, well, we don't have to twist it too hard. I love doing things, and I would definitely love to be a part of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll follow up with you.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to stay in touch, Kelly. I'm talking to Kelly Nobles, one of my all-time favorite drummers, but beyond that, one of my all-time favorite people. Okay. Bro,
right on, brother.
Thanks for being on the Far Out Podcast. Be sure to check out Kelly's drumming on my new track, Ride Strong. It's coming out soon. And, you know, I'm going to give him another taste of it right now. What do you say?
I say right on.
Crank it up, people. This is Ride Strong with my good friend Kelly Nobles kicking ass on the double bass drum kit.
Never